Hello and welcome to Psychic Teachers. I'm your host, Samantha Fay.
And I'm Deb Bowen.
And today we have such a treat for you. So sit back and enjoy as we prepare to discuss crystals with our very special guest, Hibiscus Moon. Most of you have probably seen her on her popular YouTube channel. She's a former science department head turned crystal practitioner and self-proclaimed geo-geek extraordinaire. She's the founder of the Hibiscus Moon Crystal Academy, which has been certifying people from around the globe since 2011 in the art and science of crystal therapy. She's also the author of the best-selling book, Crystal Grids: How and Why They Work. Hibiscus Moon has garnered a thriving Facebook and Instagram presence with over 500,000 followers in her crystal family. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the show, Hibiscus. We have so many questions for you, but we want to start with a basic one. How did your love affair with crystals start?
Okay, I can dive into that and riff about that all day, but can I please just tell everybody what a fangirl of you both I am, and that I've been listening to you since Blog Talk Radio on my little iPod fake like knockoff thing since since the very beginning.
And we are honored and beyond words to hear you say that. So thank you so much for that.
I love you too so much. Deb both of you have such an energy. Deb, for me, your accent just puts me into this trance-like state. And of course, the knowledge you have to share. And then Samantha's voice has this particular resonance to it that gives me ASMR tingles. Have any of you heard this before?
I have heard that before. I dislike my voice, so I really appreciate that.
Oh, no, I love both. I love both. Okay.
Thank
so anyway,
you.
What was the question again? Love affair with, okay. How did it start?
Yes.
Okay. So, well, way back when I had my first memory very strongly emblazoned in my brain from when I was 3 years old of leafing through. My father used to take us to museums and stuff that kids don't like to do and would find boring, but he took us to these museums, and I don't recollect seeing, I think it was the Museum of Natural History, and I don't remember seeing the crystal or mineral collection. I don't even know if he went there, but he had the book. He got the book, and it was like a coffee table book, and I remember just being enthralled by that book and leafing through it every day. And what they would have is like a picture of a rough crystal, and then next to it the faceted one. And sometimes the rough crystal was just as gorgeous as like a faceted one, like a tourmaline or something. And I couldn't wrap my brain around the fact, and I'm 3, but I'm going, because they would have pictures of people mining them and them coming out of the dirt. And I would go, this is in the dirt. Like, so I would go digging in my yard looking for crystals. I didn't find any. I found lots of worms, but not the crystals. But I was just absolutely riveted that Mama Earth created these beautiful, gorgeous beings in nature.
There's something special about that Museum of Natural History. I'm sure you've been to that crystal room since, haven't you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, several times after that, as we grew up, he was always taking us to things like that. Forget Disney World.
So how did you turn that into your science department work? Did you work with crystals in that area?
Yes, but it was a really twisty, windy, longy kind of road. I had not realized that my metaphysical interests which I've had my whole entire life, and my scientific interests could actually merge together until I was older. I was good at science. I had my metaphysical interests. I was into, like, I guess you could call it the occult, like in middle school, I would be going looking for all the books that, were hidden in the library, and was so enthralled by all that stuff. And I remember reading Shirley MacLaine's book, Out on a Limb, in 1986. Pretty sure that was the year, because it was my senior year in high school, and being like, this is it. Oh my God, like everything makes sense. This is it.
To tell you, that book changed my life too.
Really? Yeah. Right. That's a life-changing book, I think. And especially back then,
Yes.
how many, we didn't have too many books like that. My mom had it, and I grabbed it off of her nightstand when she was done with it. That's how I ended up with it. Anyway, that was really made an impression on me. And so I was always kind of like dabbling in both worlds, but they were completely separate to me, compartmentalized to me. And then I don't know, somehow I've always been a teacher and always in the science world in one way or another. Became a science teacher, became a science chair. I did that for almost 15 years. But in the middle there, while I was a science teacher, I don't remember exactly when it started happening. I started realizing, I mean, you kind of can't avoid it, where these things start to merge together and you see common threads in both the scientific world as well as the metaphysical world as well as the philosophical world. As long as you dive deep into either of the subjects, you start seeing the commonalities and the aha moments start hitting you. And I remember being the science department chair who was also into crystal healing, and it was a funny road to walk because I didn't hide it from my colleagues at all. I was always the one they came to for last resort. Nothing else worked, and they go, "What crystal is good for this?" They would act like they wouldn't believe in it at first, but then when I don't want to use a bad word, but when the crap hit the fan, they would come to me for what crystal works for this. So they knew there was something to it. I definitely knew there was something to it. And I was pursuing the metaphysical side of things on the side. And I remember very vividly doing that like since the beginning of the early 2000s. And then in 2007, I don't remember what happened first. I discovered YouTube or what. I think that was the first year YouTube became online, came online way back in the old days. I was researching. I knew crystal grids was important, really important. And I knew there was a science behind how and why it worked. So I was researching that, and I found like a small community and one main guy, and I forgot his name and he's not on there anymore. And I so wish I knew who he was, but he would do these crystal videos on crystal grids. And that's pretty much where I went off the deep end right there.
No turning back.
No turning back at all.
I love that.
So here's a question we have for you. How do you use crystals in your life every day?
Okay. I'm very, very practical. And I know for it to fit into my routine, at first the ceremonial things and the ritual things and all the fun things, like let's cleanse this crystal, all sounds like fun. And in the very beginning, I was all into that stuff, but then very quickly realized with my personality, if it doesn't fit into my daily routine easily, then I'm just not going to keep up with it. So it very easily does fit into my daily routine. From the time I wake up, I am doing crystal things because I drink crystal gem elixir on tap. And I have crystals on my bedside table that I have little morning like rituals that I do very quick. They're not long or anything, but kind of like law of attraction manifestation kind of things that I do before I get out of bed. And then I usually I have one crystal that I wear all the time that I'm supremely bonded with. I'm not one of those people that's constantly changing out my jewelry all the time. I do for special things, but it's got to be easy. And I think that might be because I'm a Capricorn. I don't know. Then I usually have 1 to 3 crystal grids going at the same time for different purposes in my home. I also have a crystal grid around my home that's there for protection at all times. And I do a daily crystal meditation. That's how I begin my day every day. So it's very practical, but my meditation's like 10 or 15 minutes. It's not really long. And then I have a nighttime routine, but I hesitate to even call it a routine because it's so quick and easy that that's just what it needs to be for me to fit it into my daily routine and do it consistently. But I am consistent and disciplined with those practices.
Yeah. And that's the key, isn't it? To keep up these practices and to make it a part of your daily life so that crystals can really start to work with you. Because in my experience, I don't know. I think when I first went to a crystal store and bought my first crystal, I thought, I don't know, my fairy godmother would appear. I just thought something magical was going to happen like right away. And nothing happened for weeks. And when I started doing more research and learning about how the science behind the crystals and how the energy and the vibration works to impact and bring our vibration up, I thought, oh, this takes time. Like all good things, it takes time.
Yeah.
So when you work with them on a daily basis, then the crystal and you develop a relationship and you can see the impact in your life.
Exactly. That's what I was just going to say. It builds a bond.
Yeah,
Yes.
I got my very first crystal from the very first psychic with whom I did a reading in the early 80s. And she gave me my first little quartz point that lived around my neck for, like you say, you had that one crystal, and that stone and I were together for 20 some years before it finally broke and was like, Deb, I'm tired. I got to quit. You need to move on, girl. And and as I listen to you talk about your practice, it's interesting. Our daily work with our stones are not that much different from where I'm sitting right now. I can see two grids, and there's stones by my bed, and I do the same kinds of things. And I think you're right. I'm probably not maybe as consistent with it as you are, but I know they're there, and I know they're working and doing what they're meant to do. And for me,
Mhm.
that's such a gift in my relationship with my stones.
I think so too.
Well, Deb, Joel, and I do crystal grids together. And so now we live in three different places. We're not all in the same town anymore, but we will all come up with one thing that we're working on in our own personal lives, and we'll share it with the other two. And then we create crystal grids. We choose crystals based on those three things the three of us are working on, and we create a crystal grid. We write an affirmation for each person, and we focus on that for a month at least. Sometimes we've done it for longer, right, Deb?
We
Yeah.
certainly have. We help support each other with three grids working together.
I love that you guys do that. That is so beautiful. And by the way, Joel, if you're out there listening, I'm a big fan of yours too, because I know you're the crystal guy over here, and you have been like a mentor to me since this podcast of yours started. So I love to hear his opinions on things too.
Oh,
I'm going to
thank
tell him that and make sure he listens. He'll love that.
Okay. I love
Absolutely.
Joel.
We will. Thank you for that. You mentioned earlier that cleaning crystals is a thing, and it is for all of us who have a lot of rocks. So one question is, what is your favorite way overall to clean your stones? And we get, I'm probably not exaggerating, and I bet if we get this, you get many more people trying to understand the difference between cleaning a stone and charging a stone.
Yep.
So can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh, yes. Okay. So, as far as cleaning a stone, I think of it as retuning the crystal, like retuning the vibrational frequencies into that crystal back to its base resonant frequency. And since crystals have different things we need to be mindful of, their Mohs hardness, some of them are very fragile or friable, can't go in water. There's all these different ways we've heard of. Oh, you can cleanse your crystals by sticking them in salt or putting them in water and doing these different things, but not all crystals are going to tolerate that. So I found the safest way, and I think the most effective way, is sound. I'm all for sound because it's safe for every single crystal. You don't need to worry about anything. But I think it's also the most effective way of resetting that frequency of the crystal. And you know what? When you first get a crystal, you may or may not need to retune it or cleanse it, depending on where it's been and the energies it's encountered before, but you don't know. So why not rather be safe, right, than sorry? So I always do this with a new crystal. And it doesn't hurt the crystal if you go with sound. So we might as well go ahead and retune it just to be safe. And my favorite way to do that, actually, technically, any sound, loud sound or high amplitude, that means loud, will do this. You can actually feel the vibrations. So it almost doesn't matter what sound, but somehow on a mental level, it just seems nicer to me to use something pleasant. So I like singing bowls, crystal singing bowls, or tuning forks. And then the next question I always get is, what frequency, what hertz, what wavelength? And it doesn't matter. It does not matter at all. All that's happening is that it's loud. Make sure it's loud. So you almost like you can feel the vibrations, and it will go through the crystal and it'll retune them, just like you retune a guitar or a piano.
Do you put the crystal in the singing bowl?
I usually don't, because I'm always afraid something's going to crack.
Yeah.
I just make sure it's in the room with the sound, and that's good. But you can use a speaker if you want to, and just turn it up. Tibetan singing bowl, whatever feels right to you. and you can make it loud and make it ring and like start, like I love crystal singing bowls because you can really get them going and you really feel those vibrations, the sound acoustics traveling through you and traveling through the crystal. And you can almost visualize all the little molecules getting right back into their pattern where they're supposed to be. So I really love that.
Before you move on to charging crystals, I just have to ask this question. So my teenage daughters are, of course, on TikTok. And they sent me a video of someone who had poured water into a crystal singing bowl, and they put their crystals in the water, and then they sang the bowl, and all the water bubbled. Well, of course, my girls and I, we take out like jasper and quartz and, some amethyst stuff I know can go in water. And we're putting the mallet around the sink forever. It never bubbled.
When you say, I didn't see this TikTok video, I'm not on there, but when you say that it bubbled, were they ringing with the mallet of the crystal singing bowl and like rubbing it around the outside of the bowl?
Yes, they were rubbing it around the outside, and there was like maybe just an inch of water at the bottom. And as they got the bowl really singing, all the water bubbled around the crystals. And I thought, oh, I want to try that. And I can sing my bowl. I'm very good with it. And it did not bubble.
Huh.
I've
never tried it, but I can see why it would, because the vibrational frequencies would be going through. But I would think it has something to do with the shape of the crystals, maybe where they were. Maybe they were breaking up and causing what we call in physics destructive interference and interfering with the waves. It might have been the size or the structure of the crystal. Maybe they had smaller crystals in their TikTok video that allowed the vibrations to become what we call constructive interference, where the waves build up and they will bubble and ripple and do that stuff. But maybe somehow the way you had the crystals positioned or the size of them was causing the interference with the waves.
Oh, that's a perfect answer. I think it was the size. I just thought it looked so neat to try that.
I got to try that. I got to look that up.
All right. I'm sorry to interrupt. Go on to charging crystals.
No interrupting at all. This is fun. All right. So as far as this is a question I get to all the time, explain the difference between cleansing and charging the crystals. So, well, we already talked about the cleansing, and I prefer to look at it as retuning because in my mind, it really explains what's happening. But I don't subscribe to the concept of charging or programming of stones. And I'm not going to get into whether those two things are different because I don't subscribe to either one of them. I mean, if we believe, here's my stance on it. And I know everybody's, opinion is different. So please don't let my opinion change yours. But here's what I think. If we believe that certain crystals can help with specific things or have a certain set of correspondences, why would they need us to also program them? I feel, and I teach that crystals have their own pre-programmed properties due to their unique vibratory frequency or their signature, if you will. And that's a result of many different variables, including their elemental makeup, the specific environment that Mama Earth chose to cook them up in. I also feel that although the vibration can temporarily get knocked out of whack under very special circumstances, it's not an easy thing to do, and it's a temporary thing, and we can put it back into place by retuning the crystal. So again, does a crystal need me to tell it what it's good at or what to do or how to do it? I think not. I feel like Mama Earth had figured that out well before human beings even came to be on the planet. So I leave it to the planet to figure all that out and do all that quote unquote charging or programming.
Oh, yeah. It's like, wait, the stone's going to do what the stone is meant to do. Who do I think I am?
Yeah.
It would be a polite thing for me to ask it if it would do what it's meant to do with me. I think that's a polite way to communicate with the stone. But
yeah, I think it's more about programming ourselves.
Yes, that's a great way to look at it. The other piece of this puzzle, though, and I work every day with a tuning fork. I drink water that has been tuned to a particular vibration.
Mm-hmm.
You'd think I'd think about that with my rocks, right? But so thank you for that. What a lovely idea. But also crystals get physically dirty. They get dusty, sitting on a table in your house. And so sometimes I say to folks, it might be a nice thing to dust them off. And if they are able to be wet, then to run them through some water and clean them. But I think that that's a piece of it that folks forget too, is that the physical object itself sometimes needs cleaning and dusting just like the rest of your house. And that when you do that, or at least for me, when I pull out all the rocks, and I do this pretty frequently, maybe once a month or so, I pull them all out and everybody gets dusted or washed off or whatever. And at that point, it's as if I've reconnected my energy with the intent and the energy of the stones. And for me, that's a meditative process.
Oh, exactly. And I love that you do that, Deb. And you're pretty good with it, doing it once a month. I'm overdue. I need to do that myself. But you do have that reconnecting, that bonding that happens when you take the time to give them some TLC.
And it shifts everything up really, really nicely. I mean, I have crystals in every room in my house, as I'm sure you do, and I know Deb does. And I will cleanse them and do all the stuff that Deb has said. But recently we had a violent episode at my daughter's high school that she witnessed, and she started having some nightmares. And so I took all the crystals out of her room, lining her windowsills and on the top of the windows and in the corners, because I grid each room as well. I took them all out, I cleansed them, and I replaced them. I put nothing in there but black tourmaline. That was it. Just
I love it.
tumbled black tourmaline all in her room. She has not had a nightmare since. She has slept through the night. She feels totally different. She feels safe at school. And I think it's the one thing that has turned her around, because you know how teenagers are. They're like, oh, mom and her rocks again. But she has mentioned it at least 3 times. She's like, Mom, I think that black tourmaline, I think they're really doing something. And I just think it's such a great example of how crystals work for us, but also how important it is to sometimes shake up that energy.
Yes. Yeah. I believe like cleaning my sacred space definitely resets the energy there. But I'm glad you mentioned black tourmaline and I can totally see why that worked for your daughter. And I'm so glad she feels it. There's a lot of physics properties, measurable empirical evidence, scientific evidence behind black tourmaline. It's one of my top 3. So it's not surprising at all. It's pyroelectric and piezoelectric, which means that it can actually polarize electricity and energy within it. And it's one of the reasons I think why your daughter felt so good with it. It's very good for transmuting energy. So if energy has a specific charge to it, no matter how it got there, and it has a negative feel to it, obviously it did for your daughter, black tourmaline is a go-to transmuter for me. It brings that energy back to neutral. So for that reason, I have a big piece in front of me right now. I always keep it between me and my laptop. I'm transmuting that electromagnetic radiation coming off the laptop. I've tested other crystals and minerals. And when I tested the black tourmaline, and I showed this in a YouTube video a long time ago, I get beneficial results. Now, I'm the first one to tell you, it's not the best thing. It's not going to completely mitigate that EMF energy, but it's one thing I can do to help mitigate it. And it's, like I said, I love it when I stumble upon empirical, measurable, scientific evidence that a mineral is doing its thing. So if we can measure it, then imagine what's going on the etheric level where we can't measure, because I believe we can't measure everything. So I love it for transmuting negative energy that people also might bring into a space, whether it's feelings, nightmares, someone comes into your house and just, verbally vomited everywhere. I think it's great for that.
I do too. So I was at a neighborhood barbecue a couple of years ago, and I met my friend's father, who is a geology professor. And I was so excited. And I was like, oh, what do you know about rocks? And what do you think about this? And what's your favorite stone? And he went on and on and on about metaphysical nutcases, I think was the terminology.
Uh-oh.
So I would just love to know, have you ever encountered someone who basically just says, like, they're just rocks, like, calm down. They're just rocks. What do you say to that?
Yeah, of course I've encountered that. It's my favorite thing to do is throw some science at it. And that just gets people to, especially with the skeptics, to just sit back and listen, and first of all, to say that they're just rocks. There are rocks that I work with that are quite powerful, like lapis lazuli and what's another one? Granite. and unakite. So my favorite thing to do is to get all geeky on them, okay? And like start talking all my high level technical language that I can muster up. And like I start going down the path of technically a crystal is never a rock. The definition of a rock is a combination of one or more minerals in a mass. A crystal, on the other hand, and God forbid they're in my house, I will bust out my crystal molecule models. Okay. So a crystal, on the other hand, is a very different animal. A crystal has its atoms, its molecules arranged in a highly ordered, repeating microscopic pattern, forms a crystal lattice. So a rock can never be a crystal. And I usually go into deeper detail on that. Then they're usually sitting there, sorry they ever dared say such a thing. Not to say, like I said, that rocks don't have their special attributes too, like indigo gabbro and lapis lazuli, unakite. These are all technically rocks, not technically crystals. But so I just get all technical on them. And then they're like, oh God, why did I open my mouth?
I love that. I needed you there with me at that barbecue.
But you know what? I thought you were going to say he was into the metaphysical, because I'm running into more and more geologists that are into the metaphysical and they're just afraid to bring it up because of how academia has this general way of looking down their noses. But there's more of us that are in academics that believe in the metaphysical, but just don't want to rock the boat. And I know you guys being in the academic world, I know what you know that's all about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, it's scary. I understand why they don't want to rock the boat. It's a very regimented system, but no, he was not into.
He was not one of those. Okay.
Wow. You know what I'd love is to hear a conversation between Hibiscus and Joel. Because he too understands and processes his relationship with crystals in that scientific way and can talk about hardness and the atomic structure and all those words.
I know. He's really smart about that. I would love to talk with him too. I would love to hang out with you guys. That must be just a blast.
Well, come on over. Let's do it. That'd be fun.
It would.
We need to have you back on and have Joel come on. Deb, you need to get on that.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll talk to him. I sure will.
I'm into it.
Okay, we'll do it.
Oh my God. If you had told me this back in 2011, that one day you're going to be on a podcast with all three of these people that you so admire, I wouldn't have believed it.
Oh, go on.
You're the one who is really doing this in-depth, deep crystal work every day, all day long. And we so admire that.
Mm-hmm.
But I find it's easy to do. I mean, it's what I love to do. It's what I'm passionate about. I mean, people who meet me, I'm not going to bend your ear about crystals, but if you dare bring it up to me, oh my gosh, I'm going to go off the deep end. And then I get so passionate about it. And I get other people excited about it, I think, because I'm so passionate about it.
Gosh, when you do what you love and you follow that passion, so much wonderful things come out of that.
Oh my gosh, I so agree. I never didn't love being a science teacher. I mean, yeah, the red tape and the bureaucracy kind of dampens it. And I don't know what it's like now. I left back in 2012, but I was excited every day to go in and work with those kids because I loved their energy, first of all. Second of all, we were doing stuff. We weren't sitting there, like just talking or reading from the book. We were doing labs. It was like a party in there every day, and I loved it. So I just get passionate when I see ahas in people. And I'm still that teacher with my crystal students, when I see them get that aha moment, it makes me so happy. And I think there's certain things that make a good teacher. Like, I didn't love science until I had a good teacher. I didn't know I liked science until I came across a really good teacher. And then it was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Geology and all of that. It came with having a really good teacher. I love to learn. I'm a lifelong learner. I love good teachers now. I learn from my students or I go take courses and things like that. But I think the passion of the teacher, or a teacher that when they have a passion, they have a knack for making complex subjects simple, even science. So that's like one of my favorite things to do. And what I've become known for is take what some might think is challenging content and break it down into an easy to understand concept and simplify at the same time. And then it just makes it super exciting just naturally once you grasp it.
This, I think, would be a really good point for us to take a break and you tell folks how they can connect with you and learn from you. So I want to give you an opportunity to do that in a minute. And then your concept about breaking down really complex scientific material, for example, and turning it into something that keeps people from their eyes glazing over when you're trying to use words they don't know what they mean, and just really getting started with stones. Talk to us about how you do that and tell us about the work that you do in your courses and how people can connect with you.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Deb. So the simplest, easiest way to connect with me and get a nice gift is to go to hibiscusmoongift.com. And by going there, you'll see you can subscribe to my newsletter. So you automatically become, and it's a free newsletter, become a part of our crystal family and become part of the crystal universe, and all the crystal stuff I love to talk about. I love to give free gifts to my subscribers all the time, but the first one they get is a nice, really nice one. It's how to create sacred space with crystals. So you get to kick off, creating a beautiful sacred space, and it's some really fun stuff. So it's hibiscusmoongift.com. So they can just go back there. And that's the easiest way to connect with me. Going back to, breaking down the difficult concepts, presenting them in visual formats or chunking them into bite-sized pieces or allowing us to experiment. I see that as all the fun part of science. And we don't have to we don't have to impress anybody with all the big terminology. We can break it down so that people understand in layperson terms exactly what we're talking about. But I think when you do something, that actually drives it home. We all have different modalities of learning that are stronger than others. You being teachers know this more than anybody. So I think I like to also address all the different learning styles. So I like to teach things in different ways, in different formats, address all the learning styles. So one way or another, you're going to get it, but you're also going to feed off of my passion. And what I love more than anything is now, even when I was teaching science and now that I'm teaching crystal science therapy, when people tell me I hated science, I couldn't stand it. And now I absolutely can't get enough. And I hear things like, I went back to school to become a geologist, or I'm taking physics now. And I'm questioning my professor with questions that they can't even answer because you brought this thing to the forefront of my mind. I'm like, oh my gosh, yes. So I get so happy. And like I said, I didn't realize I loved science until I got to college and was introduced to high school, introduced to some really incredible teachers who were so gifted in taking the difficult concepts and breaking them down and presenting them in a format or chunking them into pieces that allowed us to experiment so I could experience the data and seeing it from all angles and then encouraging us to think about it critically. That's what what influenced me to teach the way I do, attacking it from all sides, addressing all the learning styles. Many don't realize that it takes more time to make things simple. See, it's actually easier to leave it all complex and deliver it the lazy way and go, yep, hope you get it, sink or swim. But I don't like that for myself. I see it as lazy. Now that I'm a teacher, I see the teachers that did it that way were being lazy. I like the teachers that take the time to streamline. Repetition, it takes our brain many times to integrate in lots of different ways. And then you go, oh, that time I really got it. And they take the time to clarify. And I do that wherever I can and keep the content delivery consistent to eliminate confusion too.
It is important. And in today's world, so much of our world is so instantaneous and we want surface answers and the time, we don't always have the luxury, I guess, of the time to really delve into a subject. What is the quick and easy way for me to learn the surface information and move on? And so encouraging your students and the students that Samantha and I teach to really appreciate and understand and have a willingness to dive much more deeply, I think is so important.
I agree.
You mentioned your top 3 stones, or crystals, which really impresses me because it's so hard for me to choose like, oh, what are my top three? So I have to ask, what are your top three crystals? And do those differ from the top three crystals you would recommend for a beginner?
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Okay. So I really have like my top crystal right now. And I thought it would have changed, but it's been the same crystal for like 10 years now. And it is Ajoite. And that everyone always asks me to spell it. It's Ajoite.
Do you have
And
one?
I
do I
do.
have one?
Yes.
I have like 20.
Oh, I'm
And
so jealous. Those are the most beautiful stones. And I have yet to find one that says, I'm yours. Oh,
well,
I
they're
will
hard
post
to
on our
find.
Facebook page a photo because I bet a lot of people
Okay.
haven't heard of that.
And I don't want your listeners to smack me when they look at the price tags on these things, because
Crazy expensive.
especially recently within the last few years, they have jumped in price because they've closed the mine, the Messina mine in South Africa, where they get them from. But I see myself as kind of like the keeper of Ajoite. And whenever I see it, I have to rescue it. So I have a crazy addiction to it.
Wow.
I justify it by telling my husband that it's our retirement investments, but I don't know that I'm actually ever going to get rid of any of them. But
No, I know. I did find one that I really, really liked online and this website that Joel recommended because he loves that stone too. And I looked at it and I thought, I could pay the college tuition for my oldest daughter this semester, or I could get the stone. I opted for the college tuition.
It's crazy. It is crazy. Okay, but then you asked me about the crystals for beginners. I don't recommend Ajoite for a beginner. No. So my top three for beginners would be the black tourmaline, which you mentioned, and we talked about why. Then I think I have a feeling mine and yours will be the same, Samantha. So clear quartz.
Yes.
Because I think that's a general all around great crystal to have on hand. And Deb, you mentioned it was the first one you got. It's a clarifier. It's an amplifier as well. It can make any other crystal work that you're doing even more effective by amping up the energy. It can also help you gain clarity. Like if you need to meditate on something and you're looking for clarity around a certain subject, clear crystal quartz is just a great one to have, and you can do just about anything with it. So I think that's a first one to definitely start out with. And then along with the black tourmaline, rose quartz. Rose quartz is a quartz as well, but it's your crystal of love and compassion. And it often becomes like a close buddy crystal that people tend to get a close bond with. It happened for me. It happens for a lot of people that I've talked to as well. I have a piece that's my best buddy, and I work with it for a lot of different things, and it works for any kind of love, not just romantic love. We know there are different kinds of love. There's friendship love, there's family love, then the personal relationship, romantic love, there's self-love, there's compassion for the world and all the beings that live on the planet, and love for the planet, and kindness and compassion are the energy that rose quartz invites in. And all these different types of love are super important. So rose quartz is one that you want to have in your top three, I think, in my opinion.
I agree. No, those are great choices. I have moved not on from rose quartz. I'll never move on from rose quartz. But one stone I am so drawn to in the last couple of years, as I've really in my personal life been focused on setting healthy boundaries, has been pink opal.
Oh, that's a good one.
It's such I know it's not associated with boundary setting, but it's such a stone that helps me nurture myself and mother myself, that it's given me a lot of support when you have to do that difficult work of setting boundaries.
Yeah, and that's such important work to do.
Yeah. And I love labradorite because, well, okay, so I look at black tourmaline like a bodyguard standing outside a really hot nightclub. Like back in the 80s when we had those, and you'd have like the red rope. No, you can't come in. Yes, you can. That's how I look at black tourmaline, just this really tough, solid bodyguard. Whereas labradorite to me has that same bodyguard energy. But I don't know, when I wear it, I feel like I can do my intuitive work, and it's only going to let the positive energy in, and it's going to keep the negative junk out. So it's more like a filter. Do you feel that way with labradorite? Like it feels very protective to me, and yet it still lets all the good stuff in.
I've never worked with it in that way, but like if I aligned my intention with that, I wonder if I would get that from it. So it's more magical for me. But I tell
Yes.
people that just relying on these correspondences and books isn't the end all be all. You have to work with the crystal for yourself, like you just explained, Samantha, and see what the crystal brings up for you. One that does that for me, what you just described, is Sugi light. Often people call it sugar light, so they might not have any idea what I'm talking about. But Sugi light is like, gives me that psychic protection. Not that I'm a psychic, but like anything that's going to come into my energy and kind of get lodged there, Sugi light protects me from that.
Yes, that's kind of like rose quartz on steroids.
Yeah.
It's got that loving energy as well, which I think
That's a good way to describe it.
Yeah, if crystals took steroids, there you would have it.
I want to add just one more to the beginner bag. Actually, I think some stones to represent the chakras, to have 7 stones would be a good plan. But one of my go-tos to add to the top 3 would be amethyst. I think that's a really important stone to have in your tool bag too. And these days I have been doing a lot of work with ametrine. I have a beautiful piece that, of course, Joel sent me that is the line in between the 2 stones that have been melded together. It's just absolutely beautiful. So that's amethyst and citrine, and it's just a stone I've been working with meditation a lot lately.
That's been really helpful.
Oh, and I just looked at my kyanite. We can't not mention kyanite. That is such a hard working stone.
Blue or black?
Well, I love black for cord cutting and protection, but the blue kyanite, I actually have a blue kyanite blade that I sleep with every night and have for like 18 years.
And when you sleep with it, do you like actually physically have it in the bed with you, in your pillowcase, or by your bedside?
I fall asleep with it on my sternum, like between my heart and throat chakra. And I ask it to cleanse my chakras while I sleep, because I'm lazy about cleansing my chakras sometimes. So I think, well, if I didn't get to it today, at least the kyanite will do it while I sleep.
That's a great way to do it. But are you never worried about like flipping over and it falling onto the floor?
No, I never am. People ask me that all the time too, but it never has happened.
You're a sound sleeper probably, and you just sleep calm. And I'm flipping all around the place, so that thing would end up busted.
Isn't that interesting? These are some great suggestions for folks about how to really begin to connect with stones. One question, Samantha, am I exaggerating when I say we probably get, I don't know, 20, 50 emails a week from people who say, with a picture attached, I don't remember what this stone is or why I bought it. What is it? Whoa, that's so hard to do from a photograph.
Tiny. It's usually like a tiny tumbled crystal too.
Right. It's sort of greenish, a lot of times.
Oh my gosh, I'm laughing because this has been since day one with us getting it too.
How can we best help people with this? What can we do?
We actually have a guided response that we have to copy and paste. I can't tell you how many times for this one, because photo IDing is the least reliable method. So sending along a picture of a crystal is the least reliable method to identify it. I recommend getting an actual identification done. There are companies that can do that, but see, what people want is they want it done for free. And nobody's going to want to do it for free. Sorry, but it's their time and their knowledge. And doing actual geological testing, which is something I teach my students how to do in one of my class electives, is your best bet for identifying it. I recommend when you first get this crystal, however you got it, if you can, label it and keep it organized. Even I have trouble remembering what all of mine are if I don't do this. And in the beginning, I didn't. I have a few I have no clue about, and I have to sit down and do some geotesting on them to figure out what they are. The geotesting is very reliable, but you have to have certain little tools and know what you're doing and understand how to do it. If you're going to ask somebody else to do it, don't expect them to do it for free. And photo IDing is the least reliable method. So I know there's Facebook groups out there that do nothing but that, but I'd be a little leery of my identification that they'd be giving me.
Yeah, sometimes it's easy. I mean, if it's blue lace agate, you can tell it's not blue calcite, but some of the jaspers, forget it, or the agates, Those can be very, very
Mhm.
tricky because there's so many different kinds. So that's a great suggestion.
And
Well,
if you have a mass of a crystal, like a lot of crystals just grow in a mass and it's not particularly angled or characteristically angled, like certain crystals will have certain angles to them. You don't know what it could be. It could be calcite, it could be a quartz, and you have to do testing to see acid testing actually.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a lot. What's your stance on dyed crystals or heated crystals, bonded crystals? Where do you stand on that?
It depends. I used to be more lenient with it. Now I'm much more not lenient, where I do not want to work with crystals that have been man altered. I
Me
only want to
either.
work with crystals that have been created by the earth, not created in a lab, not synthetically in an oven. And I really strongly believe it's due to the cosmic energies changing in our solar system, which actually, again, empirical evidence has shown affects the crystal beds, has changed it so that we really need to purify the crystals that we're working with, and slightly has changed the energies of some of the crystals, like clear quartz and things like that. So no, I don't want them bonded to metals like the aura quartz, which is gorgeous as they are gorgeous. I feel like that's a crystal in prison, and that's the energy I get from it. Like, once again, don't let anything I say change what you're doing if it's been working for you. I always tell people that, because they're like, but mine, and keep on trucking is what I say. But for me, if you're asking me, this is how I prefer. And I realize like certain crystal energies have changed. Some have become more powerful, but for me, it's natural only.
I feel the same way. And I agree with everything you said. If it works for you, great. And I feel so bad. Luckily, my kids don't listen to this podcast. But years ago, they got me an aura. What is it? Is it an aura quartz where it's been bonded?
Mhm.
And it's okay. They got me one of those. They were so excited to give it to me. So of course, it is
Oh,
still in a prominent position on my desk. But
yeah.
when I held it, I had the same feeling. Whenever I go to a store, you see so often now crystals in frames, and it really bothers me. Do you
Me
ever see?
too.
I
At
hate
Home
that.
Goods or something?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And they're
Oh,
just like framed behind this glass. And I'm like, oh, I want to free you. And they're glued on there. That was the same energy I got from this aura quartz.
yep. I know exactly what you're
Wow.
talking about. I want to go up to them and break the glass and be
Yes.
free.
And I just want to bury them in dirt and be like, go back to your home, little one.
Yeah. And then the other thing I was finding in Home Goods, but I also found at the gem shows, is the dyeing and
Yes.
the saturated dye. They've all you have to do is like go, okay, this crystal looks really vibrant, hot pink or crazy purple. Rub it on your hand and watch the dye just come off on your hand.
Yeah.
And it fades in the sun really easily. So I don't think the dye is as damaging to the crystal, but if you're working with the crystal based on the frequencies of light, and this color light frequency is coming from dye, how effective do we think that's going to be?
Exactly. Well, we're running out of time, which I
Okay.
hate. But before we wrap up, tell our listeners about your academy and what they can learn there.
Okay, so let's see. Well, we're celebrating our 11th anniversary this year. So
Wow.
I'm so excited about that. And we certify people in the art and science of crystal therapy. So we teach people to be crystal practitioners. But I have to say, within the last few years, that has really changed what that means. That used to mean like seeing clients on the table, right? We think of a crystal practitioner, a crystal healer, doing a crystal session on a table. It means so many different things now. I can't even begin to tell you. And like I say, my students teach me every day. We have crystal influencers in like doing all kinds of different things with this certification. It just blows my mind. Landscapers, feng shui experts, crystal skincare products. They just do all these amazing things with this knowledge. And they're so confident about it because they understand the science behind how and why it works. They can stand up to the critics when the critics come up to them and tell them, those are just rocks. They know what to say. They know how to navigate around that. And I love the self-assuredness that they have.
Oh, that's wonderful. Are there like tests and quizzes, or is it interactive?
It's highly interactive. It's made up of 9 weeks of material, but you can take it at your own pace. So, there's no graduation deadline and they get lifetime access to all the materials. But if they want to finish at 9 weeks, they could be certified in 9 weeks. And we do have them do 3 volunteer sessions at the end. Those can be distance sessions or in-person sessions. And we do have them do a final assignment, which isn't like, it's not like a dissertation or anything like that. I don't like those things either. It's more of just, seeing if the comprehension, did they comprehend the points, that the salient points we made in the course, and really grasp the concepts. And we put so much support in place that there's no way you're not going to grasp the concept. Like no question is ever not answered. And we give them accountability buddies and live office hours. And I really tried to treat it like a university.
That's fantastic.
One more quick thing that I just loved about digging through your website was the philanthropical aspect of the work that you do. And I think that's just such a wonderful piece of the work that you do in terms of giving back. Can you tell us just a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, it's one of the why I do what I do and run the academy in the way that I do. We have certain charities, like we have a list of 10 that we rotate through so that we get to donate to them on a regular basis. We end up donating anywhere between $20,000 and $25,000 a year to the different charities. And then something we do every year, we're actually doing it right now, is we also have all the team members on Team HM express who their favorite charity is, because maybe they have a specific, thing going on in their life that they're really into. And we donate to the charity that they want donation going to. So we're doing that this month for them. It's just one of those things that I love to do. I want to give back. I'm so grateful to the Crystals for allowing all of us to do what makes us so happy. And so we just want to give back. So these are vetted charities that help with all sorts of charitable efforts. But sometimes we do it because there's a devastating event that just occurred and we need to pay attention to that at the moment. But otherwise, we have that list of 10 that we rotate through. So we're regularly supporting them.
How wonderful. I can't tell you what an honor it has been to spend this hour with you. Thank you so much.
Likewise, I feel exactly the same way about both of you.
Oh, that is so exciting and such a treat to know you've been listening to us. That means a lot. Just as a reminder, everyone, if you go to hibiscusmoongive.com, you can get her free download and sign up for her newsletter and find out so much more. So I will post that in the show notes and on our Facebook page. And this week, just look out because I'll post some of her YouTube videos that I really love. I loved your video of your favorite crystal books because selfishly, I was like, those are mine too.
Oh,
and
I'm not surprised.
One of the ones you recommended was out of print. And I was like, oh, I'm so happy I have that because I didn't know it was out of print. And then I was recommending it to a listener a couple of months later. Well, it is no longer out of print. And I think it's because of your video.
Which one was it?
The Raphael one.
Oh, Katrina Raphael.
Yes.
One of her books was out of print.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, no.
I think it was
sacrilege. What are they doing? No,
I know. I think it was the one in the middle. I have her like in order in my bookshelf. And I think it was the middle one that was out of print, but it no longer is. And I thought, oh, look at that. So you're doing good work all around.
Katrina Raphael is like one of my mentors. I wish I could meet her, but she's, I think, quietly living in Maui now and on her spiritual quest and enjoying life.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. Good for
you,
Katrina.
I know.
Well, we hope you'll come back on. It's been such a treat.
I would love to.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for listening. Please remember, as always, to be the light for yourself and others.
Take care, everyone.